Hi guy, welcome back beyond the gates CBS. Kat had learned to hold fear the way some people hold their breath quietly, stubbornly, as if refusing to name it could somehow keep it from becoming real. This time was no different. When she told Tomas about her grandmother's tumor, she didn't share it to seek pity or comfort. She shared it because she wanted to prove she could handle the truth without breaking. Because she believed strength meant carrying the weight alone. But the moment she saw worry settle in Tomas's eyes, the moment she sensed him wanting to step closer, Kat instinctively raised a wall. She let him touch what she knew, but she would not let him touch what she feared. She admitted the illness in her family line, yet kept the BRCA test locked behind a door she refused to open. For Kat, taking that test was never just a medical decision. It was the act of placing her hand on the handle of a dark room and forcing herself to walk inside, knowing the light might reveal a future she wasn't ready to see. She didn't refuse because she didn't understand the stake. Refused because she understood them too well. Her stubbornness wasn't born from recklessness but from terror. She was afraid that the second she allowed herself to be vulnerable, everything she'd worked so hard to control would slip out of her grasp. That stubbornness became a pressure chamber inside her, tightening with every passing day. Kat wasn't only resisting the test, she was resisting the feeling of being sentenced. She hated the idea that her body could be shaped by invisible genetic code, hated the truth that no amount of discipline, ambition, or good choices could guarantee safety. And because she hated it, she avoided it. She disguised avoidance as confidence, disguised panic as control, disguised fear as sharpness. In front of Tomas, she kept her voice steady as if the threat belonged to someone else's life, not hers. But privately, the questions grew teeth. What if she took the test and the result destroyed her sense of certainty? What if she was forced to face decisions that would reach deeper than love, deeper than career, deeper than pride? What if she had to say those things out loud, to her family, to Tomas, to herself? And what if she no longer recognized the person she became afterward? But in Fairmont Crest, secrets rarely stay the way you place them. They don't sit obediently in a box. They leak through unfinished conversations, through stiff smiles, through silences that last a few seconds too long. And the harder Kat tried to hide, the more she signaled that something was being hidden. While Kat insisted she could manage her fear privately, the relationship between her and Ted cracked further under the strain. Ted wasn't just her father. He was a man who could not tolerate watching the people he loved push themselves toward danger and call it choice. He saw in Kat a reflection that unsettled him, a stubbornness that matched his own, a pride that mirrored his, and that specific kind of self-destruct that belongs only to people who believe they are the strongest in the room. Their conflict might have been enough on its own, but Shanice turned it into something sharper, something more combustible. Kat didn't see Shanice as simply a woman. To Kat, Shanice represented a loss of control in Ted's life, a symbol of chaos entering a family that survived on appearances and discipline. Kat watched her father step into a relationship she believed was wrong, and her reaction wasn't only anger or jealousy, it was the panic of someone losing her place as the person who understood him best. She attacked publicly, mercilessly, calling Shanice unstable and accusing Ted of betrayal as if she could force reality back into the shape she preferred. Kat wasn't only punishing Ted for choosing Shanice, she was punishing him for changing in a way she couldn't manage. When Ted leaned toward Shanice, Kat heard a message that frightened her more than she wanted to admit, that her approval no longer mattered, that her voice no longer held power over his life. Ted answered her with a coldness she wasn't prepared for. He didn't soften his tone. He didn't try to soothe her or bend her on her rage. Instead, he cut through it with a hard finality, as if he had waited too long to say the words. Apology season was over. There would be no more careful concessions, no more polite retreat into silence. Ted reminded Kat of his role as her father, not as a man begging for permission, but as a man reclaiming authority. He was still Ted. He still had the right to choose his own life, and he would not allow his daughter to turn his love into a public trial. At the same time, what Kat feared most was becoming undeniable. Ted and Shanice's relationship wasn't fading, it was intensifying. Their New Year's Eve kiss, a moment that could have been dismissed as impulse, became a point of no return. For Ted, it wasn't a mistake, it felt like release. A breath of truth after years of being molded by expectation, judged by status, watched by the Dupree world. For Shanice, it was confirmation that she wasn't standing outside his life anymore, that she had stepped into it in a way no one could erase. And for Kat, it was a silent slap. It proved her father would not freeze in place and wait for her approval. That made Kat fight harder, as if defeating Shanice would restore order inside her. But the more she tried to control the outside world, the less control she had over herself. The BRCA issue became a splinter in her mind, something that kept bleeding no matter how tightly she wrapped it. Every time someone mentioned family health, Kat stiffened as if preparing for battle. Every time the word genetics drifted into conversation, she redirected it like a skilled dancer refusing to land on the wrong step. She smiled, she deflected, she moved her body away from the center of danger. But even her quickness betrayed her. She was running and Ted could see it. Ted watched Kat in the moments she thought were invisible. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her grip tightened around a glass, the way her eyes scanned the room as if searching for exits. When family health topics surfaced, Kat's expression hardened, her laughter shortened. Her instinct to escape flared. Ted wasn't easily softened, but he wasn't blind. He understood she was carrying a secret that was both heavy and poisonous. And the worst part of it was how it isolated her from the people who might help. Then Ted remembered Donnie. He remembered what it looked like when BRCA became more than a test, it became an emotional earthquake. He remembered fear that wasn't only about illness, but about identity, about losing control, about becoming a subject of pity in a powerful family that treated vulnerability like weakness. Yet he also remembered something else. When Donnie faced the truth, she didn't shrink. She became sharper, more grounded, more real. That memory fueled Ted's belief that Kat needed a shock strong enough to break her denial, to force her into adulthood the way pain forces growth. Still, Ted did not choose a private conversation. Maybe he was tired of locked doors and evasions. Maybe he believed Kat would never listen unless she was cornered. Or maybe, beneath his logic, there was bruised prettier resentment built from Kat's harsh judgment of him and Shanice. From the way she spoke like a judge while pretending it was love. Kat had labeled Shanice with cruelty, had accused Ted without mercy, had made him feel as if he needed permission to live his own life. And Ted, no matter how much he told himself this was about health, could not deny the deeper truth. He wanted to teach Kat a lesson about limits, about responsibility, about the difference between stubbornness and strength. The Dupree family gathering arrived wearing its usual polished mask, a room full of elegance where tension always breathes under the surface. Kat walked in holding her calm like armor, but Ted noticed the cracks. He noticed how carefully she moved, how she watched faces, how she seemed prepared for impact. The beginning passed in polite conversation, but in a family like this, the surface never stays untouched for long. Soon enough, the topic of family health rose like smoke. It might have started as a harmless question, a passing comment. But for Kat it sounded like an alarm. Ted tried to approach it carefully. He tested the edge of the conversation, giving Kat space to speak for herself. He mentioned genetic testing with a tone that seemed casual, but the message underneath was clear. Kat felt the trap closing immediately. She smiled too fast, redirected too smoothly, changed the subject with practiced ease. But her avoidance didn't save her, it confirmed everything. And the more she dodged, the more Ted's disappointment hardened into resolve. When the right moment came, it came quickly. As the family continued discussing health, with the subject hovering like a fragile glass ready to shatter, Ted made his move. He accidentally revealed the truth that Kat had refused the BRCA test. It was only one sentence, but it carried the weight of a loaded weapon. The room froze, as if the air itself stopped moving. Heads lifted at once. Silence landed heavy and immediate. Kat had no time to prepare. She felt stripped in public, armor torn off while everyone watched. Shock turned into rage so fast it nearly stole her breath. Kat's body went rigid, her mind scrambling for a way to regain control. She denied it at first, not because she believed the lie would hold, but because denial was the only defense left. She wasn't ready to admit weakness in front of the family. She wasn't ready to become the tragedy people whispered about. Worst of all, she felt betrayed. Ted hadn't simply revealed a secret, had stolen the last piece of her control and thrown it onto a table where she had to react instead of choose. Her private fear had been transformed into a public lesson. Her internal war dragged into the open where everyone could dissect it. Ted did not retreat. He insisted he had done it out of responsibility, out of concern for Kat's health and the family's future. He framed it as fatherly love, but his tone carried something else, to something firm, almost victorious. That only deepened Kat's pain. It made her feel like a child being punished rather than a woman being protected. Kat had wanted agency. Ted had taken it away. And now she was trapped between the people who believed they were saving her and the father, who had pushed her into humiliation. The Dupree family divided instantly, though no one needed to raise their voice for the fracture to be obvious. Some looked at Ted with approval, convinced he had done the right thing. They believed health was not a game, that Kat needed to be forced into reality before her stubbornness became a disaster. Others looked at Kat with sympathy, recognizing that fear cannot be bullied out of a person by exposure. They understood she wasn't careless, was drowning in a private battle no one could see. The room became heavy with judgment and compassion colliding, an atmosphere so tense that every breath felt dangerous. Kat felt the humiliation rise like icy water in her throat. She wanted to cry, but pride welded her face into stillness. She wanted to scream, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. And so she chose the only option that preserved what little dignity remained. She left. Kat's exit wasn't a simple retreat. It was a silent declaration that she would not be turned into a performance. But when the door closed behind her, the consequences hit harder. She wasn't only carrying rage toward Ted, she was carrying fear that had been awakened and exposed at the same time. She could no longer pretend the test was something she could postpone. Now the entire family knew. Now the entire family would watch her like a ticking bomb. If she didn't act, someone else would try to act for her. And then there was Tomas, the one person she had allowed close enough to hear about her grandmother, but not close enough to touch the truth beneath it. Ted's revelation meant Tomas could learn about the BRCA refusal from someone else, not from Kat herself. Kat hated that thought more than she wanted to admit. She hated losing the right to tell her own story. She hated knowing her silence might now damage the one relationship she tried to protect. Even Ted, after the shock of what he'd done, didn't feel entirely victorious. He watched Kat leave and realized rightness did not equal gentleness. He believed he had acted as a father should, forcing reality into the open. But he also knew he had cut into Kat's softest place in front of everyone. He told himself he was done apologizing, yet something heavy lived in his chest. A quiet awareness that he might have just lost his daughter in a different way. Because Ted understood one thing clearly now. Kat would not only be battling the possibility of illness, she would be battling betrayal. And a woman who feels betrayed while terrified can become unpredictable, capable of choices that drag everyone down with her. The hook began forming the second Kat stepped outside, her hands trembling from anger and shame, her heart pounding like a warning drum. Her phone started vibrating in her pocket again and again as if fate refused to let her run. The screen lit up with Tomas's name and the cold dread that flooded her was immediate. Because Kat knew that if Tomas heard this truth from anyone else before he heard it from her, the secret wouldn't be the only thing destroyed. The Beyond the Gates CBS Spoilers channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the series from the perspective of a longtime fan. This allows viewers to gain deeper, more objective, and interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the series.